Okay, so this workshop's on relationships and communication, and what I wanted to show there was that we're in what I would call a decadent time. So what does that mean? It means we lack, we're in what John Vervaeke calls the meaning crisis, so we lack a coherent sense of meaning as a culture. Like if I said, who here would die for Belgium? Like most people just laugh, right? It's just hilarious, right? Because the idea of it. Now there are people who would die for Israel or die for Ukraine, right? Just to take a couple of examples. Yeah. So and in World War I, for example, people definitely the idea of dying for a country just don't make sense, right? The West meant something. Now people are pretty embarrassed about the West. I was in the Palace of Justice, a big principle of Western culture, our sort of civic religion, if you will, is the rule of law. Yeah, that's not everywhere. That's why, for example, Russia is very corrupt. It doesn't have such a firm sense of the rule of law. Most of you, on a values level, agree with me, I would say, on this, that you want there to be law. You don't want to just be shaken down by the police and there to be corruption. Even if the law is not perfect, some sense of the law. And this is, in English culture, we have Arthur. He was the king, but the king was subject to the law. This is the Magna Carta, if you know the history of European democracy. Yeah? And that's actually an Arthurian legend, that even the king is subject to the law. So this is a spiritual principle of the West. And it's one that I think is quite beautiful. I was in the law courts yesterday, and a Belgian lawyer, actually Dutch, was nice enough to show us around. We just got chatting to him when he showed us around, and he was like telling us about the law courts. It's very beautiful, the Palace of Justice. Beautiful building, and it took half an hour out of his day, and he was a busy guy, to show us it. So that showed to me that he was like, look at this culture, isn't it beautiful? But then when I talked to him about it, about Western culture or the civilization we're in, he was sort of embarrassed. There's this sort of post-colonial embarrassment that Europeans have, or post-World War II fear of nationalism, which I understand, actually. So I tend to talk about Western culture rather than national. It's transnational. It's an idea, right? It's not just a nation. And then there's many ideas that we hold sacred, right? So even though we might not be in this Paleolithic, very coherent, like who here believes in women's rights? Who thinks women should not be abused and women should have the same rights? Okay, so there's something we all agree on. If this was Saudi Arabia, or even Japan, or Afghanistan, we might not agree on that. Okay, so cultures are different, cultures have different values, that took hundreds of years of fighting and developing an idea, and it started, and then went away, and then it came back, and it grew, and then it grew a bit more, and So the meaning context we're in is the container of our relationships, right? Like, do you and your partner believe in the same things? Or similar enough? There's a decent Venn diagram. So what are you in service to other than simply your own enjoyment? Right? Because if we're in a relationship and it's just like, well, this is convenient and, we both enjoy it for now, but, fuck you when we don't. Yeah? The other thing is if we lack meaning in our lives, if we lack a coherent narrative, a coherent sense of meaning, which in the sort of modern era we have to construct to some extent, then that puts a lot of pressure for us to be hedonists. So people seek pleasure and hedonism when they lack meaning. This is why, for example, I'm 17 years sober today. Okay? Yay. And if you're in sobriety, one of the things they teach you is you have to develop some kind of higher power, or inner power, you used to say. And this is the idea that something matters more than me. Yeah, you also have to develop community. So you go to meetings and you get to know each other, and in meetings you do what's called service. So service is where you put your fucking ego aside and you make the coffee for everyone. Where you put there's meetings you can go to in London where like Russell Brand is making the coffee. There's like famous rock stars who I won't name, he's been public so I can name him, but there are famous rock stars who are putting the chairs out for everyone. And it's this idea of you put your ego aside and you're in service to something. But if you ask the average married couple, what are you in service to? They'll be like, I don't know, each other, our children, love. We have some sort of idea of love, I think, still in the culture, right? We could be in service of love beyond just individual pleasure. Yeah, and we sort of don't have this community context. So there's so much pressure on the individual relationship because it's super individualized, which is the strength of the West, but it's also a weakness. Yeah, we're not a shame-based culture. We don't have a sort of societal structure saying, hey, you should stay here. So this is a context we're in. The eco part's the other part. When you're in nature with your partner on the beach or walking in the woods, do you feel more or less connected? Who feels less connected when you're in nature with your partner? Nobody. Who feels more connected? Like somehow it helps the connection, the flow, right? So, you know, this is the environment we've evolved for. So in an urban context, you might feel it like you're a bit nastier or a bit less forgiving in an urban context, or you might feel like, who feels like less sexy? You know, you're in the center of Brussels, and it's noisy and busy, and then you go on holiday, you relax, you're in the sun, you're swimming, and all of a sudden, you're attracted to your partner again, right? So there's that, nature is erotic as well. Okay, so that's the context we're in, and the decadent context, it would be hedonism, nihilism, and narcissism. None of those are language, so hedonism is addiction to pleasure. Nihilism is you don't believe in anything, okay? And narcissism is the selfie culture. Yeah, it's I'm the center of the universe. How can you have a relationship that way? Okay, so this is the decadent culture we're in. What are the antidotes to that? Well, embodiment is one, getting back in our bodies. That's the basis of finding meaning, of connecting with others, right? Bringing some kind of nature into our life, bringing some community into our life, and bringing some meaning into our life. It's not given to us anymore, which in many ways is a good thing, right? We're not told, right, you all have to be Christians, right? Or Jews or Muslims or whatever. We have to make our own meaning. We have to find communities in there. So that's a very different structure to have a relationship within. Makes sense? Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes?
There has been attempts for communes or villages of going to Portugal and create this new tribe, and it doesn't always work out.
No, it doesn't. Often it doesn't work because they're pretending they're pre-modern, and you can't. Your brain is modern, right? Western civilization has happened. The cat is out of the bag. It's too late. The other one is people often aren't equipped with the interpersonal skills. So if people are bringing their like, well, I'm an individual and I want to live in Bali or Portugal on the beach and it's all about me, then good luck with community. Good luck with that. The other thing is, what do they mean? Like if there's a community, like what's its ethos? Like what's it for? Is it just so you can live on the beach or live in Portugal in the woods? Or does it have a meaning? So if you look at communities that do work out, and there are some, whether they be sort of modern ones, you know, Findhorn, for example, I've spent time in. Tamara is pretty long established in Portugal. You know, they have an ethos and they have practices and they have ceremonies and rituals, and they've recreated many of the things that our Paleolithic ancestors had. Or the Amish, you know, they have a philosophy, right? They're Amish, they have an Amish thing, they do the Amish thing, right? You know, they're a successful community that's lasted in America for, what, a couple of hundred years now? Yeah. So it is possible, and I think the more the postmodern desolation happens within the modern world, you know, encouraged by the tech giants, encouraged by the media, etc., who are making us dysregulated for profit. The more that happens, the more you'll see people start to make their own villages. Sometimes the ones I like are not everyone living together, because then you argue about the cheese and it's annoying. The ones I like is like everyone's sort of living in a similar area and having connection with each other through dance, through ceremony, but not, you know, still having some independence and not having to spend 2 hours talking about who ate whose cheese. So that's a sort of looser solution. Like I live in a small town where a lot of people help each other with their kids, a lot of people have barter economy, this kind of thing. You can do that in a city. It's like a village within a city. Yeah. Good point. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, in our group we were saying that this new postmodern, the way that which could work, takes work and effort.
Yes.
And, yes.
It takes real work.
Yes. And that's not always easy for everybody.
People are exhausted. Modernity exhausts people. Postmodernity exhausts and confuses people. Yeah. Right? So we're exhausted from modernity, like, you know, harder, faster, more. Like most of you are cyclical in your hormonal cycles, but work isn't. Mm-hmm. We're all cyclical in our annual cycles, and work isn't. You know, we have electricity, you're supposed to turn up 9 to 5 all year round, you know, 50 weeks a year or whatever. Okay? And that's unnatural. And on top of that, post-modernity, no one knows what the fuck is going on. Like, do you have this feeling, like, what the fuck is happening? Like it was like Trump, Brexit, COVID. I'm like, what the fuck? Like aliens could land on the White House lawn this year, and I'd be like, I knew it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even surprised by aliens anymore. You know, the fucking US government's admitting aliens now. I'm like, okay, I fucking whatever. Like we're all just confused, right? It's fucking crazy making. So it takes some work. It takes some work, and we don't necessarily have much resource. I think there are virtuous cycles. So self-regulation, embodiment. Co-regulation, that's co-embodied practices, eco-regulation, nature connection, and theo-regulation, you know, purpose work, meaning work. Like I'm big on that. All four of those are mutually supportive. Okay, so the more you're in nature, the more your relationship's easy, the more your embodiment's easy, the more you find purpose. But that's going in through nature, but you could go in through the body, right? You do yoga, then your relationship's easier, you find purpose, you know. So there are virtuous circles. But what I think the key thing here is if somebody's struggling, today we're focusing on relationships. In Amsterdam a few days ago I was focusing on centering on self-regulation. And if someone's not well regulated, we're not, you know, like it's a baby's crying, right? We're not like, do some yoga, bitch. Like that's obviously not the solution. The baby needs holding, community, it needs singing to, it needs touch, it needs love, it needs movement. You know, the baby needs a lot more than just like self-regulation pattern. Now, when it's a baby, it's funny, right? But actually, you've got more or less the same nervous system. Now, you can do a slightly better a baby can't self-regulate, right? It relies on its parents. But you can do slightly better self-regulation, but that's 10%. Yeah? Most of it is the community, the eco, the theo, all these aspects. So, I think, first of all, let's cut ourselves some slack if we're stressed and we're in this, you know, non-context, we evolved for something else, and you know, we're not perfect, we're stressed.
What does it mean, cut yourself some slack?
Cut yourself some slack means be forgiving, some self-acceptance, some sense that if you're not the perfectly calm yogi all the fucking time, living in a modern city that's completely insane. Like I'm in Brussels Midi, right? Okay, I'm staying in Brussels Midi. There were alcoholics screaming at 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday outside my window, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not 100% on top of my shit today. I'm doing okay, you know, I'm still using my techniques, I've got my friends, which helps, right? But it's like, that's the context I'm in. It's urban, it's dysregulated, yeah? It's non-culturally coherent. So yes, there's some positives to that. I like a curry, right? But there isn't the same sense of sort of meaning, coherence, you know? And that's the reality I'm in. So I want to give myself a bit of forgiveness if I'm not like the perfectly calm yogi, or you know, I'm not the perfect husband, or whatever it is we're looking at. Cool. So one, a bit of forgiveness, a bit of slack, you know, not being too hard on ourselves. And second thing is, how do I create the best context I can given my evolutionary needs? So what, in my case, I moved to a small town that was in the countryside, so I can be around more nature. Part of that is I make an effort to get to know my neighbors. You know, the meaning aspect, I'm continuously making an effort to go, what's my life purpose, to put some effort into that. And, you know, I do my meditation in the morning. Yeah. Cool. Question, Igor?
Can you say the 4 things again?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a little. I learned this in Ukraine, actually, is how I was teaching in Ukraine. People are very stressed when they're getting bombed, so you have to find easy ways to remember things. So we have self-regulation. Yep, so self-regulation. So co-regulation, it's like you're hugging someone. Yeah. Eco-regulation, it's like a tree. And theo-regulation. So theo means religion or spirit or meaning, purpose. So once again, self, doing the yoga thing. Okay. Co, eco, theo. It's like a little dance, you can teach that to kids. Okay, give yourself a round of applause for a little dance.